Good morning and welcome back to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. Today's topic is freedom, and I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to settle in. And let's take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and feel the energy coursing through your body. And as you release your breath, just relax. Relax your shoulders and your neck. Relax your back and your jaw. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Fill your lungs up. Imagine that oxygen just coursing through your blood and into your cells, and exhale and relax. Bring yourself present right here, right now. And let's take our fingers and our palms and press them gently together and softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel that wonderful tingling and just enjoy being present in your body right here, right now. Welcome. Good morning, Dido. So glad you're here. So today's topic is freedom, and I want to talk about, I just want to explore that with you. It's not that I have a fixed agenda in this conversation, but in thinking about freedom, I think a lot about freedom of thought and the freedom to interpret our circumstance and to determine how we respond. Our responsiveness in the world is really what freedom is for me. Is the freedom to choose how I integrate my experience. And so much of that comes from a place of being willing to question, rules that are being put forth by myself, for myself, and also rules that are being generated externally, or trends to those rules, and or even prevailing modes of thought. So freedom is something that we need to guard, or to be vigilant about recognizing and preserving, I think. I've noticed that in this time of the distraction that COVID provides for so many of us, there is legislation that's being pushed through, or attempts at legislation being pushed through, that we're not paying attention to, but that has potential to limit our freedoms. And one such thing that I just was made aware of the other day was I don't know if it's a ruling or a I don't know exactly what the status of it is, if it's a law, but it's relating to the FDA trying to regulate homeopathic remedies, and essentially to try and eliminate homeopathic remedies. And I don't know if you have any experience with homeopathic remedies. It's a very interesting thing. It's actually energy medicine, because it takes a substance and dilutes and dilutes and dilutes and dilutes until technically there's no residue of the original substance. So what remains in terms of its action with the body is an energetic signature. And many of us are familiar with the notion that we are energetic beings, and that's why we have responses to energy medicine, like homeopathy or like light therapies or energy from the hands, for instance, or Reiki. And it's because we are electrical, energetic beings. So, the comment period for this homeopathy uh, threat, or the threat against homeopathy, was the 23rd. I found out about it on that day, actually, and was fortunate enough to find a petition to submit in terms of comments, because there was a comment period. But this, you know, freedoms of choice around our health is a really, really, really important thing now more than ever. And I've spoken this multiple times about how important it is to be paying attention and educating yourself about the issue of vaccines and their efficacy, and how they're researched and how they're developed and what the ingredients are and what the ramifications might be. And this is a really, really important thing for everyone to make ourselves aware of, and um, to be informed, so that when we're faced with, and I don't think it's an if, I think it's a when we're faced with the prospect of mandated vaccination, we have an educated response to that proposal. And so freedom is something that I want to look at on all different levels. I started talking about personal freedom, and the personal freedom to think, freedom of thought. We have freedom of speech, or we believe we have freedom of speech. And just to circle back around to this issue around vaccines and such, there is a lot of censorship happening right now, where people that are expressing viewpoints that are not the mainstream viewpoint around vaccines, around this virus, are being censored, where their Facebook pages are being taken down, and their videos are being taken down on YouTube, and all kinds of things like that. Now, I'm not saying that what they're saying is the truth. I'm saying that it's important to be able to have access to uh, opposing points of view in order to be able to make a reasoned assessment. And one of the things that we revere most in this country is our freedom of speech. And when dissenting views are censored, it is an affront to all of us. It costs all of us, because we don't have it erodes that fundamental freedom that we revere and actually take for granted in this country. And in the U.S., we are blessed with at least the concept that we should have freedom of speech. And people have died in defense of that right and that freedom. And it takes diligence to preserve it. And so I invite you, when it comes to news, when it comes to the virus and vaccines and whatnot, I invite you to be alert. Be alert, do your research, and when you see that freedoms are being challenged or eroded, that you stand up and speak forth for your freedom, because your freedom is my freedom, is the freedom for us all. And um, let's go back to freedom of thinking, because so many of our beliefs, and I've spoken about this before, but so many of our beliefs are unexamined. And by making a conscious practice of looking at the beliefs that underlie our actions or our reactions, we will gain a better perspective, and we will gain the opportunity to choose. Dido says, freedom of speech definitely takes diligence to preserve it in different ways in each generation, for sure. Absolutely. And right now, we live in a very, very interesting time. And in fact, I think that that's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. But we do live in interesting times. And one of the big banners that would probably be iconic for this era that we're living through is false news, fake news. And because we have been exposed to that phrase so often, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. And we have come to be questioning more and more, which I think has value. And it's also a challenge to find out really, truly, what's real, what's not real, what's true, what's not true. And so our diligence is called for more now than ever in order to exercise our freedom of speech, our freedom of thought, our freedom to choose. In order to have that freedom be educated and informed, we need to do our due diligence, and we need to be questioning our basic assumptions within ourselves. Like if you find yourself dismissing something out of hand, check in to see, is that choice or is that just reactivity? Because the freedom resides in our ability to choose. And if we are not able to objectively evaluate our own responses to things, then that's actually not exercising freedom. That's being a reaction. That's where we can tend to be somewhat robotic in our expression of our lives. Just where we go through the motions because that's what we've always done or that's what we've always believed. And now we have the opportunity to be questioning those beliefs and creating a new path forward in our lives, in our culture. And that new path forward is something that will evolve from good questions that we seek new answers to. And so, in exercising our freedom, we first need to recognize where we are not free. And one of the places where we typically would not be free is in our reactivity. And so for me, the evolutionary process, the process of awakening, is the process of freeing myself from my reactivity, freeing myself from the influences of my past that have held me bound. And the way that we can move into that freedom is to look at, on a personal level, at our reactivity. So I notice that when I'm reactive to something, that I'm not being present, that I'm not living in the present. What I'm typically doing is living out of an experience from my past that influenced me in such a way that I do not have the capability to respond to it in in a way that is fully present to this moment, that isn't necessarily informed and programmed through past experience. So I've noticed in my life, when I've noticed moments that I'm particularly reactive, rather than making the stories that I'm repeating in my mind be about, well, they did this, they did that, and I'm justified in reacting this way, blah, blah, blah. When I have a strong reaction to something, what I notice is that I'm in the throes of a reaction, that I'm not actually expressing my freedom, that I'm not actually present. And so what I look at is, what is the wound? What is the hurt? Where does that come from? How can I heal that? How can I bring myself to a place of presence and balance? And in those queries, that is a path to a deeper experience of freedom, personal freedom. And ultimately, the more we are able to connect with and express and live from that place of personal freedom, which ultimately is a place of pure presence, then the more appropriate our responses will be in the world, the more effective our responses will be in the world, the more joy will it be able to experience, the more impact we'll be able to have. And so the invitation today is really to explore your reactivity and notice how those reactions keep you in a place of bondage, like how those events that triggered that reactivity are still holding you prisoner. And let's take our freedom in hand and exercise our capacity to transcend that bondage of our past and of the traumas that have shaped us, and also of the triumphs that have shaped us, into certain beliefs or notions of who we are, or certain emotional responses that have characterized our interactions. And let's find our way to presence, to be able to evaluate the presentations that life brings to us, so that we can respond responsibly. Let's be responsible by presencing ourselves more and more and more to the moment and the requirements of the moment. And let's be willing to preserve our freedoms. So Dido says, if I'm having a strong reaction to something, I sometimes try turning it on its head 180 degrees with the opposite thought, or reversing genders, etc., to try and challenge any assumptions I have, just to look at it with fresh eyes. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I love it. So to look at it from the vantage point of being a different gender, it was fascinating. What a great idea. Or to look at something from the opposite viewpoint. And that's really, really powerful, because as you can entertain a new viewpoint, what you recognize is that there's a predisposition to hold a particular viewpoint, to hold on to an emotion, to hold on to an identity, to hold on to an opinion. And all of these things, as we encounter them, the question that I have is, is are you holding the belief, or is it holding you? And that's what I'm talking about in terms of freedom. So the other day I was talking about holding beliefs as working hypotheses rather than as truths. And this is a time of flux. It is a time to truly be entertaining what's happening with a degree of questioning and skepticism. And I don't mean cynicism. I mean a willingness to truly engage in questioning. So, response able, by presencing ourselves moment by moment. Love it. Thank you. I think that that's what we want to be doing, is more and more we're called right now, in order to be creating the world that we can imagine being wonderful and magical. We need to be response able, and we get to really recognize the value of freedom, and also to recognize that freedom does come at a price, and that price is awareness and responsibility. So I think that might be it for today. I'm so glad to be able to share this time with you. I thank you so much for being here, and I invite you to please, if you enjoyed this, if you got benefit from it, please share it, like it, and tell people to join us. Let's engage in these conversations together. And please check out the other wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. And this is The Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin. I'm here every weekday at 9 a.m. So please, I hope you'll join me tomorrow. And thanks so much for being here. Love and deep compassion to you. Take care.